So welcome to Tamarah's Closet today. I tell you, it's a true honor and a pleasure to be here today because I actually have absolutely the youngest guest so far on my show with me. And in fact, he's a teenager, but you won't even believe that once you meet him. He's so focused and passionate about what he's doing in life, and he's in a positive direction. So it's hard to believe that I'm talking to anybody this young, but this young man has acquired 6 world records as an author and poet, and he is only 19 years of age. He's published 9 books of poetry since 2011. And his actual first collection, titled Celestial Inferno, which is poems of another realm, at age 15, and which he has marked actually marked him as one of the youngest authors ever to have been published in the world. So this is just really exciting and fascinating to me. He's been constructing works of literature since the age of 5, and it is his primary focus still today. Like I said, he is just so focused and driven, it just blows me away. Between the ages of 7 and 11, he wrote some short stories, working his way into the artistry of poetry, which is actually where his passion lies today. And at age 12, he regularly submitted some works of poetry to a website, poetrynation.com. And with one of his first poems, Breaking Home, he was actually able to position himself as one of the top 305 finalists in the United States through a contest which was headed up by Poetry Nation. So over the next 4 years, 8 more books were published. And actually, as of June this year, 2015, he successfully claimed ownership of the world record title, the most books published by a teenager. And he was officially honored by a record setter, a leading world record organization. And today he continues, and he also has some other world records that we're going to talk about coming up. Today he continues to press forward towards the next great milestone in his career as a professional author and entrepreneur. And he presently stands today as one of the 21st century's most prominent and renowned poets. So without further delay, I want to introduce to you from Addison, Illinois, author Aaron Ozee. So Aaron, I want you just to say hello so I know that you are still with me on the internet here.
Hey Tamarah, how are you?
I'm great. I'm great. And I'm just so excited to have you here today, Aaron, because like I said, it's just you really inspire me, because just the fact that you're so focused, impresses me, because at your young age, that's just not typical. So I know when I talked with you on Skype for the first time a couple weeks ago, Aaron, you were telling me about the teacher that you had at Indian Trail who encouraged you to write poetry. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about what prompted her to encourage you to write poetry at that time, and because had she seen some of your writings, and why did she want you to move into that direction?
Well, it all started when I entered Indian Trail Junior High, which is the school that you entered before Addison Trail, which was actually my high school. And she was my humanities teacher in 8th grade. And I just developed a certain connection with her that I hadn't developed with any other teachers there at the time. She was very understanding, and she obviously expressed a very creative, outreach towards my work. At the time, I had been going back and forth between my mother's house and my father's house, near Rockford, Illinois at the time, and was writing short stories every time I would go over by him. And that's just kind of how I kept my time busy, was writing, obviously. And I would share these short stories with this teacher. Her name was Cynthia Oberman. And when I would share these stories with her, she would just sit there very quietly, listen to what I had to say. And at the end of each story, she would have a list of critiques, that she would bestow upon me, just to kind of help improve my work, modify my writing style, really analyze the tone that I was putting forth in each story. And, even though some of her criticisms were, slightly harsh, I took them to heart and made sure that I am, bettered myself, each time I went and met with her. And eventually one day she went ahead and said, you know what, Aaron, it seems like you have a very imaginative mind. You're so creative, and it seems that you can create almost anything from anything. That was actually what she said. And she's like, I would strongly encourage you to start writing poetry. And at the time, I had no idea what poetry was. I had not researched it in any way. It was just all new to me. So she's like, Aaron, she's like, just try to envision a world where you can do anything you want to, and just form it in the shape of words. And, there you go. You have your first poem. So I didn't really know what that meant at the time. But one day when I was over at my father's house on Rockford, I sat down, pulled out my notebook and, my pen, and I began writing. And, at first it was just all, pieces of, poems, and I just didn't really know how to fit the words together. But after many weeks of, just revising it and, trying to figure out the best way to, form my ideas, my first poem, titled Judgment, came to life. And that's just kind of how I got started writing poetry.
Well, I want you to read this. Just go ahead and read Judgment, because that was one that I really liked. And I know that was, I was going to ask you about that coming up, but since you've already kind of brought that up, I know that judgment is something that we've all been, especially big dreamers, have been faced with throughout our life, our peers and family. So let me let you read a little bit of that.
Yeah, sure. Just to let you know, and the viewers of this interview know, this is the first time ever in my career that I've been recorded reading any one of my poems. Ever.
Oh, wow.
So I thought there would be something exclusive to share with you today. So, here it goes. Let me pull it up and let me read Judgment to you. All right, here we go. The shadow of the mask of fear. Fear only fears fear itself. The brightness of night and moon, the bitter cold and freezing point, the talent of listening and tolerance, time changing at the precipice of humanity, the mortal form of greed and pride, the grasp of life and success are lost on the journey to eternal brilliance in the minds of men and their makers, on the perplexing path of self-righteousness that ventures deeper and deeper into the human soul, when the sudden realization of judgments against yourself and others higher than your standards and superiority that comes face to face with self-doubt and dramatic blasphemy. And wow. Conclude, that's the end of Judgment. So they obviously, just by, the diction that I, chose to put in there, the type of words, the sophistication of the vocabulary that I decided to incorporate into this poem. You could tell, it took me quite some time in order to get it right. That's probably like the 25th draft, of all the times that I tried to create that poem. There was just so much work put into it, and it just took a lot of mental power in order to define what I was thinking and make it appear in poetic form.
And how old were you when you wrote Judgment?
It's hard to say. I took about 3 years to write my first book, Celestial Inferno, Poems of Another Realm. So I would guess maybe around like the age of 12.
Yeah.
12. Yeah, something like that. It was a long time ago. I can't even really remember writing it, but I remember all the, time and effort I put into it, but I just can't really remember the specific date. I wish I could, because that'd be great to recall, for you and the viewers today. But, just know, Judgment stands as a important milestone in my career as a poet, because that is what started it all. That's what started my journey on this, amazing path that I decided to take.
Yeah, and you did that after. Did you do any kind of research before you actually sat down and started trying to write that, or?
I think the best way for any new poet, trying to start in this industry is to go ahead and start reading some of the most famous poets, out there, like Edgar Allan Poe, Sylvia Plath, Franz Kafka. Those are my personal favorites. On the lighter note, Robert Frost is another good one as well. Ted Hughes. There are so many poets out there that have their own styles, but I think in order for any new poet trying to start, that's the best way in order to research poetry as a genre. You can go online and, try to memorize all the different rules that are associated with forming poetry, and try to cluster your mind with that. But that's just going to be so boring. You need to actually delve into the creativity that is out there already. That I think is the best way in order to start writing poetry in general.
Well, of all the poets that you just mentioned, is there one in particular that stood out at you when you first really got started that you?
Yeah, actually, that's a great thing that you bring that up. One of the first poets that I ever read was Robert Frost, and I started to take an interest in his poetry after I saw the movie The Outsiders, which is written by S.E. Hinton. And I saw it in my eighth grade English class, and there was a poem that Pony Boy, which is the main character in the book, that he recited to Johnny as he laid, almost near death in the hospital. And it was a really wonderful poem, and that just intrigued me to write poetry even more. Just listening to his words come to life, and then I just started to so.
Yeah, you were breaking up a little bit, so I lost you there for a second. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can. I'm not sure exactly what happened.
Okay, that's okay. Okay, well, that's because I know by the time you were a sophomore, you had written like 52 poems and turned that into your first book. And
right.
And you said that was like over a 3-year period. Well, what would you say was the inspiration behind these poems, and do they each tell a bit of your story in a sequence pertaining to your life, or?
Well, it's great that you bring that up. Each poem is a little bit of me. Every concept that I introduce in every poem that I write, is a representation of something that I've either personally experienced or have witnessed in the world. A story that I've shared with family members or friends. The ideas behind my poems are, so out there. It's just kind of hard to pinpoint exactly where everything's comes from sometimes, because my mental capacity expands way further than just poetry. It goes to a place that I myself don't even really understand yet. And as I write more and more, I begin to understand more about where my ideas come from. So, and that's kind of where the basis of those first 52 poems came from, and has ultimately continued on throughout all my published works.
Wow. Because I think one of the things that so many people struggle with when they go after their dream is finding that focus, and the fact, it just amazes me that you have that kind of focus. How did you master that at such a young age?
I've always considered myself unique and different from other people, not in a pompous way, but, in a curious way. I've always known that I've had an intellect that's been higher than anyone else I've ever, interacted with, even at such a young age, going through middle school and up through junior high and into high school. That's why I didn't really have too many friends, going into high school and, leaving high school. It just, I was so isolated in my own way, that it allowed me to expand on my creativity, in ways that I never really thought were possible. I started to intellectually develop, you know, as time went on, as I started to practice more and more with my writing, and, you know, becoming more and more of an entrepreneur through self-promotion, and, you know, developing myself as a public figure ultimately. You know, so I mean, all that plays into part to what you just asked.
Right. But don't you think that your writing helps? Because I know highly creative people. I've always been very creative, and highly creative people tend to be a little bit either an introvert or just, I guess they're so different. We can be so different. And sometimes writing, don't you think your writing sort of helps you communicate and reach out in a way that you don't feel you can otherwise? Or
Right. Yeah. You know, I consider myself both an extrovert and an introvert. You know, I'm kind of in between. You know, I'm an extrovert when it comes to communicating with fellow writers, you know, spending time with family and friends, you know, trying to collaborate ideas with fellow colleagues. But at the same time, I'm an introvert on the other end, because I like to isolate myself in a way in order to focus more on my creativity. And ultimately, that's how I figured out how to, you know, fine tune my focus and how to really take charge of my life and, you know, make something wonderful happen, you know, and that was by writing poetry.
right. Well, yeah, and I think I understand that, because I know when I'm in a really creative mode, when I'm wanting to create something and like plan a photo shoot, or when I'm planning, you know, just doing anything that involves a lot of creativity, that's when I go into my introverted side too. You kind of need to be alone, I think, to I don't know, I guess really to focus on what you're trying to I guess build upon from that creativity from within, and be the most creative that you can be. You kind of do need that solitude. But I want to back it up a bit, because I know you shared with me, you shared with me, and you shared with me on Skype that it was okay to talk about it, that you'd been through a lot of drama over the years, and since you are still so young, I wanted to share a little bit of that with the viewers, of how you used that. You shared with me that you went through depression, and how you used that to keep pushing forward to write this poetry, because you'd mentioned me that you know, that was a very tragic time in your life, and you could have given up and you didn't.
Right. You know, I did allow you to talk about this in the interview, and I will, you know, respond to that in the best way that I can here. You know, going into high school, you know, throughout my freshman year into my sophomore year, you know, I had a lot of friends, you know, that were, you know, bullying me in high school. I felt like I was alone, you know, that there was really no one there for me. You know, obviously my mom and my dad were there. You know, they tried to support me in the best way that they could, you know, but I mean, this was just something that I had to deal with on my own. You know, I mean, it had nothing to do with them. You know, I mean, they were trying to be as supportive as they possibly could, and to provide me with all the resources, you know, that I needed in order to succeed in life, you know, but I just kept on returning to this dark hole that, you know, pushed me further and further off the cliff. You know, and eventually I jumped off, you know, and everything went down in flames. You know, I just was, you know, I started to self-inflict, and, you know, you know, was doing things to myself that were not healthy and were very unnatural, you know, and eventually I reached out to my mother's boyfriend at the time, and I told him, you know, that I needed to be removed from society. I needed to get away from all these problems, you know, that were affecting my life personally. And he agreed. And, you know, I eventually came forward with all this information to my parents. They were very shocked, you know, they were stunned, you know, did not really know how to respond to it. But, you know, no matter what, you know, they came forward and said, you know what, we are here to support you. You know, we are going to do whatever it takes in order to get you better. You know, so I was institutionalized in Streamwood, Illinois for about 10 days, you know, and it was a very abnormal and frightening experience for me. You know, I mean, the children that were there, you know, I mean, were about my age, you know, or a little younger. And, you know, they, you know, I mean, my first night there, you know, to, you know, ponder upon that a little bit, you know, it was very scary. You know, I had no idea where I was going. You know, I was brought into a dark room. You know, I mean, there was a bed. You know, it was very quiet at night. But, you know, as soon as I got up in the morning, you know, people were throwing chairs at walls. You know, people were fighting one another, throwing food, you know, at one another. I mean, it was just crazy. I had no idea what I got myself into, you know, on the first day, you know, and I was just, you know, stuck with these people that I had never even knew existed. You know, I mean, they were enclosed from society for, you know, God knows how long, you know, and, you know, I was just thrown into this whole mix, you know, but over the next 10 days, you know, I was moved to actually another wing called 2 North, where I was with more, you know, with an older crowd, you know, that were well behaved. And, you know, there I really started to reflect on why I was there, you know, talking with the orderlies that were there, you know, helping me through this tough time, you know, communicating with my mom and my dad, you know, outside of this hospital, you know, over the phone, or they would come and visit me. My mom's boyfriend, Lester, actually came and visited me. You know, he brought me fresh clothes, you know, food, you know, whatever I needed, you know, so I am so grateful for everything that they have done for me. You know, in regards to that situation. But I knew from the day I got out that I really needed to change my life around. I needed to stick my feet, you know, firmly in the ground and, you know, show people what I was made of. And, you know, after that, then I started to focus more on my writing, you know, and that is what drives me to write poetry to this day. Writing saved my life. Poetry is my savior. You know, and I will forever remember that. You know, it is a debt that I can never repay. But, you know, from those horrific experiences came something so precious, so valuable, you know, so beautiful that it will forever be something that I shall remember.
Did you write any during that time where you were there in the institution, or?
Yeah, I actually did write 2 poems. One was called Resist to Persist, and the other one was called Inner Gorge. Resist to Persist actually was based on card games that we played in the institution. You know, and I kind of compared life to playing a game of cards. And, you know, it really showed me how I was viewing my situation, and how, you know, and how, you know, deep I was in this hole, you know, just kind of, you know, dealing with these problems, you know, that I was faced with. The other one, Inner Gorge, was about me facing my inner demon. You know, I mean, there was this, you know, I thought that there was this very dark, inhuman entity within me, you know, that needed to be defeated, you know, and, you know, in order for it to be defeated, you know, I needed to realize, you know, a higher purpose in life. You know, I needed to purify myself through recovery. And that's exactly what I did. You know, on the like I said, you know, on the last day, you know, leaving the hospital, my mom came and picked me up. You know, I was so excited to go outside. You know, we were not allowed outside the whole time we were there. You know, I just, you know, as soon as I stepped outside those front doors, I just saw the beauty in nature. I had looked at the trees and, you know, the texture of the wood, and, you know, just felt the, you know, the wind, you know, breeze through my hair. You know, I just knew that where I was not where I was supposed to be. You know, the lessons I learned in there are still valuable to me to this day. But, you know, the environment that I was thrown into, I knew that was not right for me. You know, I mean, there were kids in there that had it way worse than I did. And I just needed to persevere and push past what they were dealing with and focus on what I needed to achieve. And, you know, what I needed to achieve was to write, you know, and that's why I started writing poetry in general, you know, and really focusing on publishing books, making myself a public figure, and trying to share with others, you know, the experiences that I shared.
Well, do you think that inner demon with you was your battle inside, that fighting with the fact that you were different and you're very intelligent, and yet you, maybe a part of you wanted to fit in, but you weren't fitting in, or?
Yeah, you know, you're exactly right. You know, I felt like there was a part within me that did not fit perfectly, in society. I just felt so unique, so out of bounds, with everything that I was dealing with, in high school, that I just needed to completely remove myself from my normal environment, take a look at what I was, faced with, and turn it around for the better, and that's just kind of how I got back on my feet. And, ever since that happened, I've continued to progress throughout my life normally, and, succeed, in many ways, with my books, and, try to do everything I possibly can to give back to my parents, to give back to my friends, to give back to the people that helped me through these tough times, and to show them what I can really do, to show them how valuable, how precious writing is to me, just by continuing to achieve more and more.
Right. Now, the Nightmare, was that one written? Because I was curious as to if that was written during that time as well, when you were in.
It actually was not. Nightmare was written almost right after Judgment was. So it was still when I was in going from Indian Trail Junior High into Addison Trail High School. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I could see why you would think that. I mean, The Nightmare is a very frightening yet, beautiful, beautifully inspiring poem. There's a lot of hidden beauty behind it. But at the first glimpse, yeah, it is a very, horrific and, bloodthirsty, piece of literature. But, on the other side, I mean, there is something so pure that, people who, read it can't really find it immediately. But if you read it over and over and over again, you could see where the basis of that poem comes from. I mean, like I said, in every single one of my poems, there is a piece of me put into them. And that piece lives on, every single time someone reads it.
Do you have Nightmare available to read, or is it?
Yeah, I do. Give me a second to pull up here, and I will share it with you all. Okay, I got it here. So I'll begin reading Nightmare. Quivering and shaky with shivering bones, the fire has broken the sky in distant zones. His mind is filled with howls and voices, unable to make decisions or choices. The hallways fill with foul moans. All he could hear were cries and groans. The full moon hovering over the nightly shadow, the sun eclipsed and created a nightly glow. The feelings of awkwardness trembled down to his feet. Nothing more painful could come closer meet. His flesh became raw and turned bitter cold. His heart beat he could not even manage or hold. His fingers quickened as he grasped for a last breath. Then appeared in his midst. It was no one else except for death. He entered a nightmare from which he could not wake. It was up to death for his soul to take. His memories and thoughts became far from reach as his conscience rested down for its eternal sleep. And that's the end of Nightmare.
Yeah. No, I like that one. But so what was going on then? What was the...
A lot of people, ask me, Aaron, are you all right up there? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And I tell, and they say to me, well, a lot of your poems are very dark, and, we just don't really understand where this anger, this, horror, this, terrifying, theme comes from. And I said, well, I enjoy writing dark because it's what I'm good at. It doesn't mean that something's personally wrong in my life, but I have such, an imagination that it sometimes goes in places that I can't really follow. And when, my imagination returns to me, I am left with all these experiences that I've never really experienced in general, and that's what just kind of creates some of the ideas that I work with when writing poetry. So that happens sometimes. I mean, I don't, all my poems aren't dark. There's a lot of poems that I've written about nature, life, love. I mean, I know how to express myself in the form of light, exuberance, but on the other hand, I know how to express myself in a way that's very dark, very creepy, ultimately eerie, and, that's what makes me such a good poet. I'm able to expand, my work into multiple themes at the same time.
Right. But I think there's also a certain I don't know how to say this in words really exactly, but I think there is a certain beauty in darkness, because everything beautiful has a dark side as well. And so just like the expression, it's always the darkest before the dawn. I mean, love has a very sunshiny, joyful side, but it also has a very angry, hurtful, dark, sad side, you know. So it's very hard to there is a fine line, and it's very hard to you can't know joy and happiness without knowing darkness. And I don't know, I think it depends on who reads it and what's going on in their life, is to how they're going to what they're going to get out of or perceive what they're reading when they read a poem like that.
Right, you know, because people, you know, can interpret a poem in a million different ways. I mean, there is no defined meaning behind it. You know, I hate when other poets are like, you know, every poem has a set meaning, and if that meaning is not uncovered, then no one gets the poem. You know, that's not true. You know, poetry is a free thinking genre, you know, in literature, and it must be expressed freely. You know, I mean, it cannot be constrained in any way by rules or, you know, criticisms or, you know, negative opinions. You know, it needs to flap its wings, and, you know, it needs to fly, you know, without any constraints, you know, without any other stressors pushing on it, you know. And, you know, I feel like poetry is something in which anyone can connect to. And that's why my work has been so universally, you know, accepted by people, you know, is because, you know, of the basis, you know, for each poem, you know, that I placed there, you know. I mean, you know, each poem has its own mood, yes, but, you know, does it have one meaning? No. I mean, it has multiple meanings. You know, it can be anyone can connect to it. You know, someone having a bad day at work, you know, to someone having, you know, a great day with family. You know, I mean, and, you know, I mean, those are just two examples for you, you know, of the types of people that would read my work, you know. And when they connect to it, they make this, you know, sort of bond with the poem, you know, that means something to them. And it really connects with the emotions that they're experiencing on a regular basis, you know, or for a certain period of time, you know. And they remember that poem. They remember the words in that poem, you know, and kind of, you know, add it to, you know, the missions they have in life, you know, how they're going to go about their next day, how they're going to go about their next month, you know, how they're going to deal with the next year ahead of them. You know, I mean, my poetry stands as the stepping stones for life. You know, people walk upon them in order to achieve the next best thing. I hope that my poetry in general, you know, is helping people succeed in the best way that they can, you know, try to make the best out of the situation that they've been given in life, you know, deal with their family, deal with their problems, you know, expand on what they know to be true, you know, defeat what they know to be false. You know, I mean, there are so many words to describe what I'm doing here, you know, that it's very hard to pinpoint exactly, you know, how my poetry is impacting the world in general.
Right. Well, poetry is an art, and it's just like art. Two people can look at the same piece of artwork in a museum or gallery and get two totally different feelings and interpretations from it. And so I just think, like writing or reading a piece of poetry, it depends on where that person is in their life. And also, like you said, the more you get experienced at reading poetry, if someone reads it who has not accustomed to reading a lot of poetry, it's just like viewing art. The more art you view or the more poetry you read, you become, it's like you learn about it, and you also develop your mind to be more open and to view it in a whole different way than the first time you just read. Like when you're a kid and you read poetry in school for the first time, you have no idea. You think it's silly, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So,
you know, I mean, there's a quick story that I wanted to share with you and the viewers here. I actually went on a vacation with my mother when I was very young to Arizona, and there's a huge art walk down there, you know, in Scottsdale. and it's just one straight street that has a whole bunch of art galleries on it. And one night we went out, we went out together to one of the art galleries that they had, and when we walked in there, I was met with this huge canvas. It was painted pure black, and it had just a red circle with a red ring around it. And I looked at the price on there, and it was $40,000 to buy it. And I turned to my mom, and I'm like, Mom, do you see the price on that thing? I'm like, who would pay that amount of money for, just a simple painting like that? I'm like, I could do that. And all of a sudden the art director, of that gallery came up next to me. He's like, young man, he's like, what do you see? And I'm like, I see a red ball with, a red circle around it. I'm like, nothing more. And he's like, no, he's like, look again. He's like, I see the universe. And, that moment right there, really expanded my perception of the world. That was just another moment that I shared, with myself as well as with my mother, that really allowed me to open up my mind to new ideas, to develop a rapport with, the type of, ideas that I met with each day. So, I mean, I thought that was a very important story to share with you in regards to what you said about poetry.
Oh, it is. I'm glad you shared that. Absolutely. It can take just one person saying something that can change your entire view of not just what you're looking at, but your whole perspective on life. So
Right.
I'm glad you shared that.
Yeah, no problem.
Your book, Ironic Perfection, what can you tell the viewers about this book of poetry? Because were these were like all these poems written during one particular period of time, or were you going through were they inspired by all different events in your life during?
Well, to kind of, outline the basis of Ironic Perfection and why I published that collection in particular is that, through my publisher, Lulu Press Incorporated, which is my print book publisher, every, little while back, maybe a few years ago, in order for you to distribute your published work on a mass scale, you needed to pay a fee for them to review the book, format it properly, and then they would distribute it. But it was about roughly $100, per title, and at the time, I had about, 6 published works released, all the way from Celestial Inferno up to my 6th published title, Molten Sunset. And there was no way that I was going to pay $600 to have all my books distributed. I mean, I was not making that kind of money at the time. I didn't have those financial resources available in order to do something like that. So I had a thought that I could take all those collections, combine them into one book, and release it as more of like a collector's edition, and mark up the price, to compensate for the money that I would be losing, if I were to, mark it down, because I mean, each one of my books, retails for about $10 in print form, so there's like $60 worth of content there that I'm offering for $30, so yes, obviously I was taking a loss, in some way, but, it was an opportunity for me to take my work and share it with the world in the smallest form possible. It just from one collection compared to 6, so I shared this idea with, probably 30, 50 different people, at the time, and every single one of them said, you know what, Aaron, I think it's going to damage your sales from your other books. You shouldn't do it. It's not going to be successful. And I just did not listen to them. I didn't listen to a word they said. I went ahead, created the collection within a few days, went ahead, formatted it, published it, and triggered it for retail distribution. And initially, I just had the idea, I was given the impression that it was just going to be featured on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com as a print book. I was excited for that because that was going to be the first time one of my books was going to be available on Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com as a print publication. So for about 8 weeks passed by, and eventually, it appeared on both their websites. But a few days after that, I started to notice that Ironic Perfection as a print title was showing up on all different retail websites, that sell books, and currently right now I've tracked down at least like a good maybe 1,000 different online retailers that sell ironic
Wow.
perfection, and just the impact, that, this book has had on my career is ginormous.
I was going to show this is the cover, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The reason why I put myself on the cover, because one, that was like the first author photo I ever took professionally. And two, I wanted to brand myself, associate myself as the author with the book, upon its release. And that was the best way that I thought I could do it, put myself on the cover. I mean, yeah, in a way it seems a little bit showy, but, it worked. People realized who I was. As soon as they started reading the book, they matched my face with the poetry. Now they understand, the man behind these creative works. They understand where these creative works are coming from, and they started to research more about me. And then that's when I started to focus more on becoming a public figure, promoting myself on social media, creating websites to represent my work, doing interviews like this, writing articles about my success, and giving tips to other authors. This book started everything for me. I mean, this was like the high point in my career, that is, caused everything from there on, to happen, up until now. Ironic perfection is what, made me a bestseller. I am a best-selling author, and without ironic perfection, I don't think that would have ever been possible.
Right. Well, no, I like the cover. I think that was actually a good idea, to be honest. But writing a poetry, but it's so different from writing a novel, and yet there's still a story to tell. Is some of your works like, is that in that book? Is it like in a sequence, a bit of a sequence, or?
Well, you'll notice that because in Ironic Perfection, it has this all 6 of my original poetry collections in there. I mean, it's not, it's not like an original work by itself. It's just all first 6 of my collections put into one book. But you'll notice that if you read through Celestial Inferno, Peacefully Poetic, Scribed Asylum, Southern Style, Horrific Paradise, Molten Sunset in order, which they are arranged in the book, actually, you'll see how my poetry becomes sophisticated over time. You'll see how I progress from my first book all the way up until the 7th book. So it's, in a way, it's like a silent timeline that you're following as you read each poem, because you'll see you'll see the type of vocabulary improve. You'll see, how each poem is formed differently. And, you can easily follow this trend all the way throughout, from start to finish of the book, so that's just kind of how it's arranged in general, how I went about it, putting each collection in the title. So
Right. Well, when you say, like, when you want to write a new poem, what generally takes place? Does an emotion strike a chord with you that makes you want to go write about it, or is it more of an idea of something that comes to you, and then the emotion comes? Kind of which comes.
There's multiple things that happens when I'm about to write a poem. Yes, you're right. I do get into a particular mood. There is a certain emotion that, strikes me as a bit odd or unique, or, gets me excited, or, inspires joy, whatever it may be, and based on that mood, then I start to speculate about which words can rhyme together for that particular mood. I kind of unconsciously get all these different rhymes appearing in my mind, and it eventually gets to a point where it gets a little annoying, and then I eventually have to go on the computer or pull out a notebook and start writing, because that's the only way I'm going to be able to get it out of my head. And then that's when, for a book, for writing a new book, I'll write the first poem, and I'll continue writing poems until it doesn't feel right anymore. When it doesn't feel right anymore, and I feel like I've exhausted the idea, then I'll stop the collection there, and then I'll publish it. So it's just kind of like this unconscious process that takes place, whenever I'm ready to write a new poem or write a new book.
Right.
It's not down to like an exact science, it's something that I myself am still trying to investigate within myself, in order to improve that process and make sure that I am providing, my fans, and my, my fans, my readers, other publishers, who are observing my work, with the best products possible, with the best finished pieces of poetry that I can.
Right. Well, you had also mentioned to me on Skype when we first met that you said that you had 3 novels in the burner, but they'd never been published because at that time there was a lot of drama going on. What are your plans for those novels in the near future, or is that something you're still going to move forward with, or?
Yeah, well, a lot of people don't know this, Tamarah, but besides the 9 collections of poetry that I've published, I have in total written about 20 books.
Wow.
And I mean, this was all done from, all the way from like age 5 all the way up until now. I mean, obviously I was not writing a full-length novel when I was 5, but, starting, when I began writing at 5, that's what kind of led into these, greater novels, it led into the short stories and me starting to write poetry. I mean, I wrote, full-length novels, 200 to 300 pages in length, and I never even published them because I look back on them now and all the vocabulary in there is so simplistic. It doesn't flow together correctly. Everything is off. But yeah, I mean, I would consider, going back to those novels, trying to revise them, make something great out of them, because I mean, I put a lot of time and effort into them, and I wouldn't want them to go to waste. I wouldn't want them to become, a book that's becoming shelved or, thrown into the drawer unnecessarily. I'm not one of those authors. I am going to make something happen with everything I create. There's not going to be something that I'm just going to let, die out, or, just fade away, over time.
Right. Were some of them, are they fantasy stories, or are they, what, can you share what type of?
Yeah, sure. One of them was called Beyond and Believe. That one was about a man who is very cruel to his family, and one day he gets into an accident driving home from work, and he ends up in a hospital. And what he doesn't know is that he's secretly in a coma, but he believes himself to be awake, and he enters this fantasy realm with all these creatures, and he goes on this almost realistic spiritual journey with all these people in order to finally realize how he's been treating his family. And at the end of the book, he comes to from his coma and he turns around his life for the better. I mean, another one that I wrote was called Downfall. That's actually about, it takes place in World War II. There's a soldier on the front lines in Germany. He's fighting the Nazis, and he gets captured on battlefield and ends up in a concentration camp where he has to fend for his life and break out. And he eventually discovers, after breaking out and freeing, the prisoners within, that his wife and his son were captured by the Nazis, and he has to go find them. And it's this great journey that he has to go on in order to, find his son and to find his wife, and retrieve them. I mean, it's just like this very emotional story, that anyone, I think, in my personal opinion, could connect to. I mean, even though it's set in World War II, I mean, the morals behind the story are so powerful that it would instantly interest anyone who decides to read it. So, I mean, there is a lot of value in these manuscripts that I have pushed to the side, and I definitely intend, even after speaking to you, I feel inspired to go back and look at them, just to make something, out of them, either if it's to publish them or to take the concept that I was working with and rewrite a whole new book, I mean, whatever it may be, I'm just not going to let them, be set aside.
Right. Well, I think that's good. It sounds like they're a bit of a drama with a dark thriller side a little bit. I could see you doing that. I could also see you writing a dark, almost like a dark comedy even.
Right. I mean, I was actually interested at one point in getting involved in playwriting. I wanted to, start that, I mean, that's kind of, where, I mean, I still consider that even today, after writing poetry, because, I write all different types of poetry, and I'm able to create, miniature realms, that people can walk into temporarily. and walk out of and get a whole different experience that they never thought was possible. And by writing a play, it would just be expanding that concept. I mean, I would be creating, this individual world, that you go into and you start observing things, that are, yes, made up, or even true, and start connecting the dots, and figuring out, the story behind, this play, or the story behind this children's book, or the story behind, this poem, I mean, but poetry, is a gateway for me to explore different types of writing. It always has been. I mean, I've tried every single, form of writing that I know about. I mean, I've tried fiction, I've tried sci-fi, I've tried nonfiction, I've tried poetry. I've tried playwriting. I've written a children's book that is currently being illustrated. I've worked with all these different styles of writing, and by me doing that, it's only helping, it's only contributing to, my, to my skills as an author.
Right. Well, because you've developed all this at such a young age, and like even you showed all that creativity as young as 5 years old, and you have such ambition, who would you say, is there anyone in your family, like your parents or anyone in your family, that had those same gifts that you think that passed that on to you? Or
I understand what you're saying. If I were to think of anyone, it would be my mother. My mom has been always an inspiration to me. She is ultimately the love of my life. She gave birth to me, and she is always something that I shall cherish. Even though her and I get into arguments sometimes, or we don't disagree about certain things, or sometimes she doesn't understand what I have going on with my books, or she has a long day at work and, comes home, distressed, or, not wanting to talk to anyone, I still love her, unconditionally, and she has always been there for me whenever I have achieved something new, and has always been supportive of what I've done. I mean, she is proud to call me her son. She is proud to share my success with others. I mean, even though, I'm getting older and I'm becoming more independent, as an individual, I still make time for my family, and I still go back to people that have influenced me. I mean, one thing to tell you, and this is, something that I have not told any of my fans yet, so it's another exclusive thing for you in this interview, is that, I have, I mean, my fans know, as well as my friends and family, that there is an author named Jessica Hickey that is writing a biography about my life and career as an author and entrepreneur. And she, I've been working with her for about a year now. Her and I have been exchanging, phone calls, emails. We've done live interviews over Skype, just me recalling, everything that I could ever remember from birth all the way up until now. And in the beginning of this biography, once it's written, I have actually already created an acknowledgments page for everyone that's ever contributed to my success as an author.
Wow.
And the first person on this list is my mother. And it's something that I believe will really give back to those people, that helped me, helped me throughout my career and continue to help me to this day. I mean, but there's so much going for this biography that I just simply cannot wait until it's done. I mean, it's going to be the largest promotional advantage that I've ever taken control of. I mean, it's going to, revitalize how people see me as an author. It's going to let them know what I've sacrificed, what I've, gone through in order to get where I am today. And it's really going to give them the backstory to who I am, not just as an author, not just as a poet, not as a business owner, but as a person. It's going to show the humanity within me.
Oh, that is awesome, though. I'm excited about that, and I'm thrilled that you shared that here today. That's you're going to have to keep me updated on that for sure.
I certainly will. You will receive a copy as soon as it's published. Don't worry about that.
I'm excited. Now, you're holding 6 world records right now. I just want you to briefly tell everybody what those are and kind of what this is going to mean for you.
Right. The world records in which I hold are the following, most books published by a teenager, most ebooks, most audiobooks, most print books published by a teenager, most collections of poetry published by a teenager. And the sixth one is youngest best-selling self-published poet. The way I went about, deciding to achieve world records like this was because I wanted a way that I can stake my claim in history permanently for good, and to show authors, here and now, as well as in the future, of what I've done, and to pave the path for them to succeed as well. Because I am the first one that has achieved these world records. And you know what? I invite anyone to go ahead and break them, because you know what? It's just gratifying to me to know that what I've done has influenced others to do the same. Initially I went about achieving the world record, most books published by a teenager, by submitting a record application to the Guinness Book of World Records. But after many months of review, they got back to me and said, you know what, due to the subjective nature of poetry and to the subjective nature of self-publishing, we're not able to verify your record. And I was very upset, in a way, because I had put so much effort into the application. I had waited patiently for them to respond. But after a couple weeks following that notice, I actually discovered Record Setter, which is actually the leading competitor to the Guinness Book of World Records. And they told me that they would be able to verify my record application within 48 hours.
Wow.
Almost instantly. And the types of records that they approve are very specific. And unlike the Guinness Book of World Records, where the records have to be, very general, very standard, very open, very monumental, in fact, Record Setter focuses more on the smaller records, the records that people are trying to achieve but have not been able to, and so I submitted the record application for most books published by a teenager. And, after 72 hours, in fact, I got approved for it. And then I was like, you know what, if I have been able to achieve this record, I can achieve 5 more. So I went ahead and thought of all the other things that I have, achieved in my life, as well as specifically in my career as an author and entrepreneur, and went ahead and, made my mark, in those areas.
Right. Well, I think it's something that you should be very, very proud of. And I was excited when you told me that you had, those were official. That's pretty exciting.
There's something I did want to also say, Tamarah, to you and the viewers of this interview, is that since I have achieved these world records, I have done research about something in particular. I wanted to see how many other authors out there hold world records, and there are some. There are some, like Christopher Paoloni, which is the author of the Aragon series. He is actually the youngest author of a best-selling series. He holds that world record, and there are other authors as well that hold world records that are verified by both Record Setter and by the Guinness Book World Records. But to date, I hold more world records for my work as an author than any other author in the world right now. And that is something that I will take with me to the grave, because that is an accomplishment that I never even believed would possibly happen. But I'm not saying that I ever doubted myself, but I mean, just the importance of that, of this achievement, is so prolific in, my life, that it is something that motivates me to get up out of bed every day, get back to work, write even more, and to press forward and succeed more than I ever would. Right.
Well, I just think it's awesome, and you should cherish that. Now, I did notice, you coming out with a children's book, My Darling Child Shiloh? Did I read that? Or?
Yeah, yes. I have written a children's book titled My Darling Child Shiloh. I actually wrote it in my last year of high school as a senior in high school. And going into college, I actually met a girl named Mallory Clark. She's an art student currently. And this was my first class at the College of DuPage. It was an English class. And I started to slowly tell her about everything that I was doing with my writing. And she was so fascinated by it that, I eventually decided to invite her to illustrate this children's book. I saw some of her work prior to asking her, and I was just so amazed by everything that she was doing, that I went ahead and, drew up a contract, and, we agreed to the terms and we started working on it. So since then, for me, about like over a year and a half now, she has been illustrating, the book. She's almost done. It should be done within maybe like the next 6 to 7 months here, maybe even sooner. I'm not exactly sure yet, but, the images that she is creating for this children's book separate it from any other children's book that has ever been published. Each image in the book is unique in its own way. It's not the same style of art throughout the whole book. It's
Right.
different. Some pages are done completely in pencil, some are done in color pencil, some are done in pastels, some are done like mosaics, like with tiles, some are done with yarn. I mean, it's absolutely insane how many ideas that she's coming up with, and it's really becoming quite the well-rounded publication. I am so excited to share it with the world, and to really get involved in another marketplace, because if you were to take the text from the entire book and minimize it minimize it on a page, for instance, it would read like a poem. I mean, the whole story rhymes, and it's a 22 verse poem. It's got 22 lines in there, and it's it's so closely related to what I've written already. I mean, the story is so simple, when you read it and you're like, well, you may ask yourself, well, what's special about that? It sounds so simple and it just sounds so generic. But if you read it again and again and again and again, you'll see, the true value behind it. You'll see why it means so much to me, and I hope that, when I get involved in this children's book marketplace, that I am kindly accepted for the work that I've already achieved, and, the work that I published, and that I begin, on a new path, beyond poetry, starting to get involved in children's books, and maybe in the future get involved in playwriting, who knows, I mean, I'm just trying to, look ahead in the future here and see what I can do in order to make myself successful, see what I can do in order to give back, to those people that have contributed to my success, and to ultimately provide my fans, my friends, my family members, and my colleagues, with the best, work that I can churn out.
Right. Well, I wanted you to, I know we're getting close on time, but briefly talk about, because I know you have your own company, your own publishing company, Ozee Holdings. Can you just briefly tell the difference between the traditional publishing houses and self-publishing companies, and why you chose to do
Right.
this? Because that's pretty incredible that you've done that at such a young age.
Ozee Holdings was founded on April 4th, 2014. I'm sorry, April 3rd, 2014. It really, what Ozee Holdings stands for is that it protects everything I've ever published from being pirated. Because I was dealing with a lot of cases where, websites were downloading my books online for free, uploading them online for people to, share, or even copy and, republish. I mean, I was so susceptible to these threats that I finally decided that I needed to establish a company that would stand as the business front to all my published works.
Right.
And what happened is that after I established Ozee Holdings, I became I became closer with my publishers. I developed those relationships even further, and organized everything that I've ever published in a very efficient way. So now, instead of me approaching a website that has published, my works, without my authorization. Instead of saying, I, Aaron Ozee, demand you to take, my work down, I can instead say, Ozee Holdings, the company that protects my work, demands you to take it down, or else you will face legal action. So I am more protected as an author than I ever have been. So now, I am basically invincible to anyone else who tries to take my content, upload it online for free, or to try to, distribute or reproduce it without my say so. And to go more into your question, the difference between traditional publishing houses and self-publishing companies is that traditional publishing houses are a little bit more stuck up, to be honest. They don't really, invite self-published authors into their network. They believe, that they can only publish the best of the best works. Stephen King, E.L. James, J.K. Rowling, all the, major authors out there today. I mean, that's what they focus on, and they think, that it is the best strategy for them to make money. But you know what? Self-publishing companies have a different mission in mind. They want the average person to allow the average person to publish their, their own works, on their own terms, and to give them the freedom of releasing their words to the world. And that's why, publishing companies like Lulu Press Incorporated, Smashwords Incorporated, and ACX, or the Audiobook Creation Exchange, believe so strongly in this, and they allow, these, they allow, including myself, and other authors, to get a chance at success. They pave the road for us. We just need to learn how to use the tools that they provide us, in order to, build ourselves properly and to, make something out of our published works, to make them classics, to make them, bestsellers and whatnot. So there's a very, very fine line drawn between the two industry spaces here. Will, they ever, come to compromise, in terms of, allowing authors the same freedoms? Who knows? But you know what? All I know is that self-publishing is taking over 60% of the publishing space, and it will continue to dominate, and eventually put traditional publishing houses out of the league, and self-publishing will become the new regime of, releasing books in the world. It's going to happen. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, who knows? But ebooks, audiobooks, anything digital, that is being published are becoming more and more profitable than any print bestseller ever would.
Right. Well, the world is forever changing, so that's.
Yeah, and with the introduction of new technologies all the time, and new websites being created, and new tools being appropriated by different companies, it's only making it easier and easier for people to publish books. They're probably going to have tools in the future where people can just, lie down, think about everything that they would want in a book, and then it would automatically appear. Who knows? I'm just speculating, but stuff like that could happen. Who knows? We have so many, wonderful opportunities put before us, on the internet, for instance, that it makes it basically, accessible to anybody. We are able to do anything we want to. We just need to go out there and find it. We need to go out there, discover it, utilize it in the best way we can, in order to improve ourselves, and improve our situations as authors, So, there is a lot of controversies around the two industry spaces, but over time, one is eventually going to win over the other. It's just going to happen.
Exactly. Well, I'm very proud of everything that you've accomplished, Aaron, and it's just amazing. And I know we're going to have to end this soon, but I did want you to, what are your plans when you graduate from, you're a sophomore, you're going to be a sophomore, right?
Yeah, I'm going to be a sophomore at the College of DuPage. I'm going to be going into my first semester as a sophomore in the next, month or so here, towards the end of August. I am majoring in marketing, so I would like to get involved with publishing companies out there that are looking to market their services, and hopefully, I can get, an internship or either a full-time position working with them. It's not that, I'm not making enough money through Ozee Holdings, or, not well situated where I am currently, but, getting, involved with a higher publishing company like Lulu or Smashwords or ACX, it would be a joy to me. I would love working with them and to, learn how to market their company more efficiently, as well as myself as an author, so it's double-sided. There's people always ask me, well, why don't you go ahead and major in English? Well, I said, well, I've already got the writing part down.
Yeah.
I just want to learn how to market more. I want to learn how to take my work to the next level and bring it to people who have not seen it yet. And by going to college for marketing, it will only make that easier.
Right. Exactly. No, I think
so I have a very defined vision of, where I want to go, and, what I want to do beyond college, and it will only, take off alongside my published works.
Well, I think it's great. I'm excited for you, and I'm glad that you have stuck with it, because I know it must be hard, like you said in the beginning of the interview, how challenging it is, especially at your age, because it does alienate you from people somewhat, because the typical person your age is not focused on anything other than being a kid. So I know it's had its ups and downs for you, I'm sure, but what you're accomplishing and what you're giving to the world, and the path that you are paving for authors to come, and people who aspire, and even people who are older, not just young people like you, but people who are older who've never had a chance to go after their dreams, and maybe now they can be inspired to do just that. And so I think it's great that you're paving a nice path for anyone, not just authors, but anyone who has a desire to achieve a certain dream that they have. So,
because I know there was someone who commented on one of the Facebook posts you made about this interview today, and he said he wanted to write a book as well, and I invite people like him to come and contact me. I mean, I am, more than willing to help someone out, and, to give them the proper guidance in order to get where they need to be. I mean, if writing is truly their path, or marketing, or business development, or anything that they want to do, in fact, my story could stand as an example for them to follow, especially at such a young age. I mean, I'm only 19 and I have so much more time to go, but, with what I've achieved so far, I hope that stands as an inspiration for people who are lost. I hope that stands as an inspiration for people who don't really have an idea of what's coming next. I hope that I can help these people. I invite them to come and contact me, and I invite them to seek my advice. I am always open.
Right. Well, that's awesome. Well, I'm going to have all this information, like for how people can contact you or whatever, links to all your social media sites, whatever, in the blog article. I hate to wrap this up, though, but the time has come. Now, don't hang up on me, Aaron. You stay with me until I take us off air, and I'll say goodbye. But I just want to thank you again. I know I'll be having you back at some point in the future to hear about all your continued success and your biography that'll be coming out. I want to, I'm excited about that. I want to just thank you for being here, and you truly are an inspiration to, like I said, people of all ages, not just the young people, but anyone who aspires to go after a dream. And I wish you all the continued success that you can possibly achieve, and I know you'll achieve it. You've certainly proven that. But I want to make sure the viewers know how to get you at your website. Can you see this at aaronozee.com? It's pretty. Is this showing up on the video here screen?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I see it. Yep. That's
okay.
Correct.
So, and also follow my blog, tamarahscloset.com. You'll be able to find the replay in a few days of this interview, and then I'll have an article and information on Aaron there, how to continue to follow him, and any links. And as I said, all my interviews are in my tamarahscloset.com blog as well in the celebrity closet section, and that's where you'll find Aaron. So I want to thank the viewers for their continued support, and please make sure you share the replays of this interview as well as all my interviews, because it helps continue to celebrate these talented people who have the courage to go after their dreams. So you're sharing the videos is what helps spread the word and get their talent out there. And as Mother Teresa says, I love her quote, life is a dream, realize it. And that's what you got to do. So join me next week as I interview one of the most promising bands on the bluegrass scene from Nashville, the Barefoot Movement, and they sing in their bare feet, so that's pretty cool. Was there anything you wanted to add, Aaron, before I take us off air?
Yeah, I just have one last thing to say. You know, I want to thank, you know, my fans, friends, and family, you know, for being so supportive of what I've done so far. And, you know, Mom, I love you, you know, and you mean so much to me. And without your guidance, I don't think I would be where I am today. You know, thank you all. You know, thank you, Tamarah. Thank you, the viewers of this interview, for watching. And I look forward to sharing more of my successes with you in the future.
Well, thank you, Aaron. And like I said, I look forward to having you back. And I want to thank the viewers again. And to the viewers' success, just do it. Take that first step and rock it and see your dreams. So see you next week.